I want to talk to you about arrays in Java. And basically arrays allow us to store a set of data. Okay, and we can think of them as grids in memory. So for instance here, a one-dimensional array, we're actually creating something that looks like this that can be represented in memory like this. This is a grid that can hold 4 pieces of data. A two-dimensional array looks like this. Okay, we can have as many columns and as many rows as we need. If we were to take this grid system here, assume that it scores, okay, and if we wanted to keep those for for 5 months, we could do something like this. This represents, we're going to move that like that, and then we could stack those scorecards on top of each other for 5. That would be a three-dimensional array. If this represented a year and we wanted to track like 3 years, it would look something like this. So those are all stacked on top of each other. This is a 4-dimensional array. Okay, so that's sort of what an array sort of looks like. They are grids. Okay, think of them as score sheets. Okay, so we can have one here. We can take those score sheets and we can stack them on each other. And we can take that as a unit and we can create multiple units of those. And the basic nomenclature of a array is basically they start with the locations. So that's box 0, box 1, box 2, box 3. And here this is like column 0, 1, 2, column 0, 1, 2. So this box location, it's just like playing the old game Battleship here where you go over so many columns and down so many rows. So the actual location of this box is 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2. This is 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 2, and this is 2, 0, 2, 1, 2, 2, and so forth. If we were doing sheets on this, this is sheet 0, sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3, sheet number 4, okay? And then if we were doing different units of those, that would be 0, 1, 2. And then we could reference by any of those on that. So we could say, okay, for the second month, I could actually go over to the second month and I could go to that coordinate system of where it was at and pick out that particular piece of data. One more thing here about the boxes, okay? These numbers that they're referenced by have to be whole numbers, okay? So you're always going to reference those by using an int or a long, okay? You cannot use a real numbers or a float, okay? Because real numbers have decimals in them, so you can never have like a 3.5. You can never have half a box. You have a whole box, you have no boxes, but you can't ever have half a box. So let's look on how we actually declare an array. And it's basically exactly like the same procedures that we do for variables, except we add some braces. So here we're actually going to declare an array that holds doubles. Okay, we're going to call it array 1. Okay, so that's basically a one-dimensional array. It's just a set of one row. Okay, here we have a string. We're going to hold some strings. We're going to hold some dog names in here. Here we could hold some scores. Now look down here. We've got double and we've got 2 sets of square braces followed by the variable name. So what we're actually going to do here is we're eventually going to build a grid to hold data that looks like this. Okay, so that's where we're going with this. So we sort of set up the arrays. We tell the computer, hey, we're going to be using these things called arrays. Just to walk you through here real quick, some of the other variables that we're going to use here in our demo. So We've got a string variable here, a couple string variables, and then we have some variables here that we're going to use for printing out the array in the form of a grid. So that's what we've got going on here. Okay, now I want to take you down further here into the program here to this step here where we actually initialize the array. Okay, so when we talk about initialize the array, this is where we actually bring the array into existence, where we actually create those spots in memory. Okay, so here's our array. Here's our array 1. Okay, and to do that then we're going to use equal, and then we're going to use the word new and then double, okay, followed by the braces with the amount of boxes that we want. Okay, so there we are. We've got a new double 5. So basically what we did up here was basically we created a grid. Okay, and we're going to call that array 1. And then the first spot of that is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's what we did right here when we did that. So the new actually puts it into memory. It creates 5 boxes, and we're going to reference that by calling it array 1. So here's one we're actually going to be able to create another array here called dog name, where we're going to store some dog names. Once again, we use new string, and we're going to store 3 boxes. We got one here for scores. We can hold 4 scores. Okay, now look here at our grid. So when we do our grid here, new, double. So here we're going to do the 3 and 2. So basically what we do is we build out the columns and then we add the rows. Okay, so the way I like to think of it, if we had a one-dimensional array, here's our columns. Okay, it's building the first column and then the second column, right? So there's our 2. And then we need to add 3 rows. So if we know a one-dimensional array looks like this, then the next part of that then is the rows. So that's how I sort of like to think about it, that we're building out this way with our rows and columns, or columns and rows. Now let's look down here at our dog name. So how do we get information into our dog name array? So we're actually going to do that right here. So as you can see here, we have dog name 0 Fido. Okay, so what's that look like? So we want to think about it like this. So we're putting in this grid in memory. We're calling it dog name. Okay, it has 3 spots. The first spot is 0, the second one is 1, and the third box is 2. Okay, so what we did right here is we actually put Fido into that slot. So now we look down here at dog name 1, we're putting in spot. And in the third dog name, okay, here's the 2, relating to that right there, we're putting in Barky. Okay, so that's what we did. This is how we put data into our array. So if the data is on the right hand side of the equal sign, we're throwing it into here. Okay, and remember, we must tell it what box to put it in. Are we limited to strictly always putting in whole numbers? Yes, but we can also use a variable in here. So we can use a variable, and they have to be an int or a long. Okay? So let's look at how we can use that then. We got the data in, but how do we get the data out? So let's look at an example of that. So right here, if we put the dog name on the right hand side of the equal sign, Okay, that's going to be equal to, this is going to take the contents out, and that was had the contents of spot. So it's going to put the contents of spot into this variable name right here. So we can actually use this and treat this as the value, okay, the value of that array spot, which is spot. So to see it in action here, I just got a couple of print lines out. So here, this first one here, we actually assigned the value of spot into dog name from our array, and here we actually printed it out. So if you run this up on here, if we go ahead and rerun this, you'll actually see that will print out. It's treated the very same on both of those. Now I want to move down in here just a little bit, and I want to talk about array values that we already know. Okay, so assume that we're setting up an array value that they're not going to change. We know the data up front. Okay, so here we've got an array here we're setting up here. Okay, called colors, and it's a string, and we know the colors that we automatically want to put into there is red, green, and blue. Okay, so this will automatically this will declare the array and initialize it with these values already in it. So basically this step does this. Red, green, blue into our array called colors. And this is in the 0 spot, the 1 spot, and the 2 spot. Okay? Now let's look down here. We can do a two-dimensional array the very same way. Okay, so this is what we're going to do here. We've got this thing called names. Okay, and basically what we want to store is Mr. Smith, Mrs. Jones, and Miss Rhodes. Okay, now think about when we first created the first array up there. When we do the first set like this, what happens? That actually creates a thing that looks like this, right? So these very first things are going to actually define the column. So we're actually looking like right here. Okay, and that's actually going to put in Mr., Mrs., Miss. Now the comma right here we have a comma right there. That's going to declare up here and separate a row for us. So right below this, we're going to add another row. We're going to add Smith, Jones, and Rhodes. Okay, so that's what we did in this right here line of code right here. We created an array that looked like that. All right, let's move a little farther down into our code. Okay, so what I want to show you here is, how can we put stuff into a grid? And it goes right back to that grid system here. So what I want to show you here is we want to set this grid up. This is our 3x2 grid in memory. Okay, so we want to put the values of 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and 35 into a grid that looks like this. So remember, this is the position of 0, 0. This is 0, 1. This is 1, 0. This is 1, 1. This here is 2, 0. This is 2, 1. These are the coordinates for this grid system. So now look down here. So here we have our array name, and look here, we're putting it in 0, 0. Okay, here's the row, here's the column. value 10. Okay, here's the row, here's the column, value 15. So they were corresponding to here and here. We've put in those two values. Once again, we can work our way down on here. We're now on the second row, which is row 1, because we start counting by ones. So we put in 20 and 25 by using 1 0 and 1 1. That's correlating to here and here. Now we go down here to the third row. Okay, 2, 2. So we put in here 30 and 35. So here's our coordinates here, all relating back to here and here. So here's another example of how we can put information into that grid system here. Now, how do we get it out? Okay, so let's do an example here where we can print this out. So I want to show you here is here we can do it, print it out here by using our grid system here by using two while statements. So we're setting that up here with this outside while statement controlling the rows. Okay, and then we're letting the inside one control the columns. So if we step through this here, right, look here, first time we go through that's 0, okay, and the row stop is 3, right? First time we went through here, this is 0, this is 2. So the value of 0 is 0 less than 2 or 3. Yes, it is. That's true. So we can go into our next set of braces. Is 0 less than 2? Yes, it is. So in this example here, we're going to print out that value. Okay, so here's the value right here. Here's our array name. Okay, this is at the coordinate 0, 0. So that's going to print out the 10. Okay, and we've got sort of on the line here. The column counter then takes us, increments 1. We hit the brace takes us right back to here. So now this is at 1. Is 1 less than 2? Yes, it is. So now we're at 0, 1, and that's going to print out the 15. Column counter then goes up to 2. Is 2 less than 2? No, it's not. That kicks us out. That becomes false. So we come down this line of code here. We reset our counter back to 0. We drop the cursor down to the next line in our row, and then we increment our row. So now this, when it comes back up here, is now to 1. Okay, as we come down through here, column counter is 1. Okay, so let me clear the numbers here. So the second time we go through here on here, this is now 1. That's 3. Column counter is still 0 since we reset it here. 2. So look here. Here's our array. So now our coordinate here is now 1, 0. So we're on that second row. We're on that second row. So now at that point up here, that's going to print out the 2, 0. This now goes to 1. Okay, the brace takes us back to here. Is 1 less than 2? Yes, it is. So now we're at the coordinates of 1, 1, which now prints us out to 25. And this is how we can loop our way through that grid. What I want you to really pick up on this example here is right here, that the counters are representing the coordinates of the different boxes. So what you want to take away from this example right here is that the counters represent the coordinates of the boxes. All right, let's look down a little farther here. I just want to show you right here that if you want to loop through an array here, so here's our dog name, you'll sometimes see it done this way here. Here's our element, okay, and we're going to take the information out of that one there and store it in the string, and then we'll system line out. So sometimes you'll see the notation here with the colon. Real quick here, I want to show you here how you can do it with a for statement. So once again here we have our 4. We're setting up our counters right here. Here's our condition, incrementer. Okay, immediately followed by another 4. Here's our counters. Here's the condition. Same thing here. It's referencing that actual coordinate here. Prints it out. And in this example here, I'm actually taking the value out of the array and I'm storing it into this variable. And then we're actually using that variable here. So I wanted to show you here how you can take the information out, store it into the variable, and then you can print the variable. We could have actually just put that right here instead of my value. And then here's a shorthand version of it. So the shorthand version using the 4 here, we're going to use double, and then this could be any variable name that you wish. So it doesn't have to be dx. You can call it anything you want. Grid. Okay, so we're going to take that individual box and store it in here. And then the next step down here, we're going to take what was in the box, store it, the contents of the box, store it here in your variable. Once again, you can name it anything you want, and then we'll print it out. That's the shorthand version of that. So that's our brief overview on how we can declare an array, initialize an array, input data into the array, retrieve data from the array, and how we can print the contents of the array. So that's your brief overview of arrays in Java.